Hi, this is David with David's Tutorials, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to make my absolute favorite chili. Now this chili is not what some people would consider true chili because it doesn't scorch your mouth. It doesn't burn your throat as you eat it. It's the kind of chili that even the kind of people who are not really happy with spicy foods, they can love this chili. Now you're welcome to dress this chili up to make it as spicy as you like, but if you start with it not being spicy, then everybody will like it. Let me tell you what goes into this chili. Basically, it's onions, meat, butter, yes, butter, tomatoes, both chopped tomatoes and whole tomatoes, and tomato sauce and tomato paste, and beans. Now the key here is that you need to use a can of dark red kidney beans and a can of light red kidney beans. I have tried it using 2 cans of dark red kidney beans, and I didn't have any dark red one day, and I tried it with 2 cans of light red kidney beans, and you know what? In neither case was it as good as when I put in 1 can of each. I have no clue why that is. It just is. Let's get started. Now the first thing I do is I turn on the heat under this pot. I've got this nice big Dutch oven, and I'm going to turn on this burner to large burner and about a medium heat and put in a whole stick of butter. Now I know a lot of people might think that a whole stick of butter is too much butter, but believe me, it is not too much butter. As a matter of fact, sometimes I wonder if it's enough, but that's what I've always used, and it works really great. The butter is now melting. I can turn up the heat right now as I let this butter melt, but I don't want to go away from it while the heat is on under the butter because I do not want the butter to burn. I'm just going to stir this around to help the butter get all over the bottom of the pot, which you can see it's starting to melt pretty well right now. But I want it to melt pretty quick. And after this melts, I'm going to add the onions. Now the quantity of onions is either 1 large onion or 2 small onions or a medium one and a small one, or you have to pick how much onion you want to put in. It really doesn't matter as long as there's a little bit more onion than you think is necessary. The reason is because we're going to cook this onion down until it's caramelized. Now when you cook an onion down until it's caramelized, it brings out the sugar in the onion and takes off the acidic bite from it. And that makes it tremendously good. You can do what I'm doing right now to caramelize onions for any other use, and I promise you'll love it. Okay, the butter is melting down now. It's getting to the point where it's almost melted. The heat is still on kind of high, so I'm going to have to watch that. Now, one thing about putting heat on underneath onions or anything else is that you can put it on high as long as you watch it, and if it starts acting up, that's when you lower the heat. But right now, I'm going to leave it on high because the butter and the onion both have a lot of water in them. Now, as long as there's water in the pot, the temperature in the pot is not going to go over 212 degrees, because when it hits 212 degrees, that's when the water starts boiling. And if the temperature tries to go higher, the water simply absorbs it and uses it to begin to boil the water. Now, it looks in this pot like there's too much butter for the onion. Believe me, it's not, because that much butter is going to be going into the chili. And I have made chili with less butter than this in the past, and it's just not as good. There is something so good about putting this much butter into your chili. Now I'm going to pause right now for a little bit while I cook the onion down, and I'll come back in a few minutes and you can see how the onion has started to caramelize. Then we'll add the meat. Okay, here we are now with the onions having been cooked down. One thing to remember, this is true for butter, it is true for onions, it is true for such things as squash that has a lot of water in it. You can cook it at high heat until the water has pretty much boiled off of it, And that's when it begins to start toasting, turning brown, turning color. You can see that the color of the onions in this pot right now is a little bit more yellow than it used to be. And when I stir it off of the bottom, you can see there's just a little bit of yellow that's sticking to the bottom. The yellow is the color that it turns before it starts turning brown. Now when it starts turning brown, that's the time to quit cooking it or to add something else. In this case, we're going to be adding the meat, and I think that's just about good enough right now to add the meat. Let's do that. This is 2 pounds of stew meat. Now, one of the reasons I like stew meat, even from the grocery store, is because grocery stores and other places that carry this sort of thing, they have the trimmings from all of their other types of meat, which includes prime rib, it includes filet, it includes ribeyes, it includes top sirloins, and of course it also includes some of the other meats as well. But what you're likely to get when you get stew meat are the trimmed ends of a lot of really good cuts of meat. Okay, now what I'm doing here in the pot, I hope the noise of the stirring is not interfering with the audio too much, but I am now stirring the meat until all of it begins to cook. I'm going to turn up the heat a little bit because I want it to get a little bit more toasty. Now you can see some of this meat is starting to get a cooked side to it. You can see the brown rather than the pink. That means it's starting to cook. Once it just gets a little bit cooked on the outside, I am going to go ahead and begin to add the other stuff. The other thing I'm doing while I'm stirring this is making sure the chunk sizes are not too big. If you've watched some of my other videos, you have learned that one of my secrets to things that I make, the recipes that I build, is chunk size. Basically, you don't want chunks so big that when you pick up a spoonful to eat it, that it's too much to fit in your mouth. Everything that you want to be able to pick up a spoonful of should have some of all the flavor. And if all you can fit in your mouth is one flavor, then you're defeating the purpose of all the other things that you put into your mixture. I'm going to pause this video at this moment and continue to cut up the meat and let it cook down. Once it's cooked down, I'll resume it, and then we can add all the other things, the tomatoes and the beans. Okay, now you can see that the meat is totally browned. At this point, the only thing that's in this pot is a stick of butter, the diced onions, and the meat. It's now cooked down and it's getting ready to continue into chili. The next thing we're going to add are the tomato products. First, a can of peeled tomatoes. These are Italian style. I love Italian style tomatoes. And we really want to get all that juice because that's part of the good stuff. And next, we have a can of diced tomatoes. And I got organic because I really like organic. And again, with the kitchen shears, I'm going to cut up those whole tomatoes into the right chunk size. We don't want to take a spoonful of chili and get nothing but a big old chunk of tomato, do we? But by leaving them in there as chunks of whole peeled tomatoes, we will get some nice good chunks in there, and they will be just the right chunk size. And the next thing I'm going to add is a can of tomato sauce. There's the can of tomato sauce. And a lot of people like to add at this point a can of tomato paste. I don't prefer to do that because, well, there's two reasons. Number one, I want the chili to cook down to the right consistency, which means it's thick enough. And that will turn the tomato sauce into pretty much tomato paste. And the other reason is that, to me, and I know other people don't feel this way, tomato paste tastes just a little bit metallic, and I don't want to add that metallic flavor into my chili. So I'm going to go ahead and let it cook down, and if it's not cooking down quickly enough, I will then add the tomato paste and stir it in and see if that will help make it thicker. But at this point, I'm going to leave the tomato paste out. The next thing, of course, is a can of light red kidney beans. Notice I'm adding all of the juice out of the can as well. All right, there's that. And a can of dark red kidney beans. And here we go with the dark red kidney beans. All right, that's pretty much all of the big stuff in the chili, all of the main ingredients. All that's left now, number one, is to cook it down. Notice how liquid it looks. That is definitely not the texture of chili. So I'm going to cook it down, and then after it gets pretty close to the right texture for chili, that's when I'm going to add the seasonings. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause things for right now, and we'll pick it back up when it's close to time to adding the seasonings. One of the things I want you to notice right now is I have the heat turned up really pretty high. It's boiling very vigorously. This does two things. The good thing that it does is it makes it cook down to a better texture a lot more quickly than if you boil it slower. In other words, when it's boiling fast, that means the water vapor, the steam that you see coming off here, you get rid of it a lot more quickly. But there's also a downside to it, and the bad thing about it boiling this quickly is that you have to come stir it about every 2 to 3 minutes, because, as I've said in a previous video, the bottom of the pot is the hottest place where it's in contact with the stove or the flame. And when there's anything to do with sugar or tomato sauce in there, you cannot let it burn to the bottom of the pot. Otherwise, it will totally ruin whatever it is you're cooking. So if I want to boil it this fast, I have to be in the room. I can do something else for a minute or two, but then I got to come back every minute or two and stir it, and just make sure it is not sticking to the bottom of the pot. It has been cooking down now for a little bit more than a half an hour, and I've been stirring it about every 3 to 4 minutes. As you can see, there's a lot less liquid on the top. I'm also scraping the bottom every time I stir. You can see it's made quite a bit of a mess around the rim, but hey, that's just part of making chili. Look at the texture of this as well. You can see it's a lot thicker than it used to be. It used to be watery, and it's not quite so watery anymore. I would say it's good halfway to where it needs to be. I just wanted to tell you that, and it's not looking like I'm going to need to add the tomato paste to this. I will taste it as we get a little bit closer. Okay, looking at the texture of this chili now, you can see it has cooked down quite a bit. And if I stir it up, you're not seeing just liquid on the top anymore. You're seeing a lot of chili texture. And this is exactly what we want, chili texture. The next step in this is to season it. Now, because there's a lot of tomato ingredients, tomatoes have a kind of a bite. So I'm going to take the edge off of that bite by adding a little bit of ketchup to that. And it's going to be a dollop. Oh, let's just go squirt. Looks like about, 2 or 3 tablespoons worth. In other words, exactly some. Let's stir that in. Ow, hot. It's spattering. I'm going to turn this boiling down so it does not boil quite as much. Now, in order to make sure I've done exactly right, I'm going to have to taste this frequently. Let's check it out here. There's just a little bit. The sauce is really all we need because the solid ingredients in there are going to have their own flavor anyway, no matter what we have in the sauce. And any flavoring we put in is going into the sauce. Here it goes. That actually tastes quite good. And now all it needs is some other seasoning. I'm going to start by adding some garlic powder, not a whole bunch. Looks like, about a teaspoonful. Sprinkle that on there. And some chili powder. Always pour it into a spoon and not directly into the pot, because what happens if you slit and put too much in? If you're pouring it into a spoon, you can always put it back in the jar. If you're pouring it into your pot, you're kind of stuck. Oh, let's get a little bit more. That looks about right. Put that in there. Now, be aware that the people who are going to eat this chili, one in particular, is not really fond of tremendously spicy food. So I'm making it a little less spicy than I would make it if I were making it for people who like spicy food. Next thing, I want to put in some regular salt. I'm only going to put in a little bit right now because I can always put in more later, but you cannot take it out once it's in. And some pepper. Now, there's not very much pepper in this, but I've got my own pepper grater, so that's probably not enough, but better not enough than too much. All right, I'm going to stir all this in. And after it's all stirred in, I'm going to go back and taste it. Now, what you might want to do if you're just getting started with this for the first time is to add some of one ingredient and then taste it, and then add some of another ingredient and then taste it, and make sure you've gotten the right amount of each one of them. Remember, we can always add more. Once it's seasoned the way you like it, which I do believe this is going to be, let me taste it here. It's got enough salt. Probably could use some more chili powder, but I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to leave it at this for right now. I'm going to let it cook maybe another 5 minutes, and that's going to be all I need to pronounce this as done. I just want it to cook 5 minutes to allow the seasonings that I put in there to percolate throughout the entire mixture. Well, so there you have it, the way I make chili. And we have here a nice pot of chili ready for dinner. Want some? I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you even more enjoy this chili. Give us a thumbs up if you liked it, if you thought this was helpful. That'll let the YouTube robots, and of course me, know that you really did enjoy this video. And come back and leave us a comment in the comment section down below, and let us know, once you try this chili, how you liked it, okay? Don't forget, you can add more seasoning to the chili. If you like it more spicy, add some cayenne pepper or some other red peppers to it, but taste it as you do it. Don't add too much. Don't forget, if you're not already a subscriber, to click that subscribe button and then the bell icon, and YouTube will remind you by email whenever we post another great tutorial right here on David's Tutorial.